Either you prepare Aegon to rule, or you cleave to Rhaenyra and pray for her mercy.
Otto Hightower. Either you prepare Aegon to rule, or you cleave to Rhaenyra and pray for her mercy. This is the exact moment the idealistic queen dies, and the ruthless matriarch of the Greens is born. Welcome back to Starflare. Today, we are breaking down the darkest, most consequential manipulation in House of the Dragon. We are going to dissect how Otto Hightower, stripped of his political office, executes a masterclass in Machiavellian psychology. We will explore how he completely shatters Alicent's cognitive dissonance, weaponizes her maternal fears to orchestrate a limbic hijack, and actively engineers the very civil war he claims to be warning her about. But first, we must set the stage. To understand Alicent's profound emotional vulnerability in this scene, we have to look at the political maneuvering that just isolated her, Rhaenyra's checkmate. Otto Hightower's dismissal stems directly from Princess Rhaenyra brilliantly weaponizing her own scandal. After Otto used his spies to report her late-night excursion to a pleasure den, King Viserys cornered his daughter. Rhaenyra agreed to marry Sir Laenor Velaryon, but issued a lethal ultimatum. "I will do my duty as heir, but you must first do yours as king." She exposed Otto as a vulture who was actively spying on her simply because he wants Aegon to be named heir. This forced Viserys to finally confront his hand's self-interested ambition, leading to Otto's immediate firing. The broken trust. Alicent is now entirely politically isolated. Prior to this, she had actively defended the princess to the king, contributing to her own father's downfall. She did this because Rhaenyra looked her in the eye and swore her innocence upon the memory of her dead mother. Alicent's genuine desire to trust her childhood friend was deeply rooted in her idealistic worldview and her desire to do what's right. She is entering this conversation completely stripped of her father's protection, terrified that she may have made a massive mistake. Let's step into the storm.
A moment! I do not wish to see you go.
The environment itself sets the stakes, a bleak rainstorm with thunder rumbling. The unrelenting rain acts as a visual metaphor for Alicent's internal, emotional chaos. She begins with a soft and regretful tone, operating not as a queen commanding her court, but as a vulnerable daughter seeking reassurance.
Such is the king's decision.
Otto offers absolutely no fatherly warmth. He responds with a pure political mind that is completely controlled and detached. By hiding behind the king's formal decree, he establishes a cold distance that forces Alicent to chase his validation.
A decision I most bitterly regret.
Still seeking emotional comfort, Alicent openly admits her vulnerability and regret. She is operating under the terrifying subtext that she may have made a massive mistake, and she is desperate for her father to absolve her of the guilt she feels over his dismissal.
And yet you made it possible. You chose Rhaenyra.
Instead of comforting her, Otto immediately seizes psychological dominance by executing a calculated blame shift. By coldly stating, "You chose Rhaenyra," he employs Robert Greene's Law 26, "Keep your hands clean." He washes his hands of the succession crisis he actively engineered and applies intense psychological pressure by shifting the responsibility for the coming conflict entirely onto her shoulders.
She swore her innocence, and I believed her.
Alicent abruptly shifts to a defensive, emotional tone. She is suffering from profound cognitive dissonance, desperately clinging to moral justifications to protect her fragile naivety. Through the lens of behavioral psychology, Alicent's mind is seeking cognitive ease by favoring a coherent story that makes her feel safe and good. Believing Rhaenyra's lie gave her a comforting conviction that allowed her to completely ignore the terrifying political realities brewing around her.
You wanted to believe her, as did her father.
Otto strikes a devastating psychological blow by ruthlessly exposing this exact coping mechanism. He zeroes in on her core weakness. She actively chose comfort over reality because accepting the truth meant accepting that her children's lives were in danger. By pointing out that she wanted to be deceived, he shatters her emotional shield and forces her to confront the terrifying fact that her reliance on willful ignorance has directly led to this unavoidable crisis.
Your informant was wrong, an honest mistake perhaps, but I did not foresee this.
You should have.
Alicent is in psychological freefall here. Otto has just exposed her cognitive dissonance, so her immediate reflex is to reject reality entirely. She tries to invalidate the inciting incident itself by by claiming the spy simply made an honest mistake. When she cries out, "But I did not foresee this," she is desperately backpedaling, attempting to absolve herself of the catastrophic political fallout. It is the frantic defense of a woman who is terrified she has just accidentally doomed her own family and is begging for an out.
If you had not been so relentless in advancing Aegon as heir!
When denial fails, Alicent immediately pivots to anger, going on the offensive. She correctly points out that Otto's relentless ambition to crown Aegon is the actual catalyst for the entire succession crisis. This aggressive escalation represents her fighting back to maintain her illusion that trusting Rhaenyra was the right choice. She is trying to throw Otto's Machiavellian blame-shifting right back at him, proving she understands exactly how he engineered this divide. But right as she lands this entirely valid accusation, the cinematic environment interrupts her. The rumbling thunder, highlighted in the breakdown as the thunder beat, perfectly punctuates her outburst. It acts as a brilliant auditory transition, instantly shifting the scene's tone from a frantic, defensive argument into an overwhelmingly ominous prophecy. The storm effectively silences her idealism, signaling to the audience that it no longer matters who started the conflict or who is to blame. The time for arguing is over. The war is already here.
Listen to me, daughter. The king will die. It may be months or years, but he'll not live to be an old man. And if Rhaenyra succeeds him, war will follow. Do you understand?
Otto completely shifts the conversation away from Alicent's past mistakes and forces her to look at an unavoidable, terrifying future. Punctuated by the rumbling thunder, he delivers his darkest, most absolute truths: the king's impending death and the inevitable civil war that will erupt due to the realm's deep-seated gender bias. This chilling prophecy fundamentally transforms the entire stakes of the scene. Otto ensures that this is no longer a simple, abstract political disagreement over who gets to wear the crown. By speaking with absolute certainty, he escalates the conflict so that politics becomes survival, making Alicent realize that the coming bloodshed is not a mere possibility, but an inescapable fact.
The realm will not accept her, and to secure her claim, she'll have to put your children to the sword. She'll have no choice.
This is the Limbic Hijack. Otto abandons political logic and orchestrates a calculated hijacking of Alicent's limbic system, the survival center of the brain. He weaponizes her maternal instinct by introducing a vivid, gruesome image of her children being put to the sword. Survival psychology dictates that when a situation becomes a matter of life or death, the pathways to the rational, moral brain are severed. Alicent's desire to do what's right is instantly overridden. Her verbal defenses are completely shattered, and she is reduced to silent weeping. This absence of dialogue marks the exact moment that realization hits. Her tears manifest the terrifying internal realization that her children's safety cannot be guaranteed by morality. Politics has become pure survival.
You know it. You're no fool, and yet you choose not to see it.
Before delivering his final ultimatum, Otto solidifies the destruction of her cognitive dissonance. By telling her she is no fool, he validates her intelligence, making it impossible for her to retreat back into naive denial. He forces her to consciously accept that her willful blindness is what put her in this terrifying position in the first place, stripping away the last remnants of her emotional shield.
The time is coming, Alicent. Either you prepare Aegon to rule, or you cleave to Rhaenyra and pray for her mercy.
This is the masterstroke. Otto corners Alicent with a lethal illusion of choice, directly applying Robert Greene's Law 31, control the options. He traps her in a horrifying binary where both paths lead to violence. If she chooses to fight for Aegon, she guarantees inevitable bloodshed. If she submits and cleaves to Rhaenyra, she risks the absolute destruction of her bloodline. Because a mother will never choose the potential death of her children, Otto's options aren't options at all. They are a psychological trap deliberately designed to force her into abandoning her idealism and adopting an aggressive, proactive stance to neutralize the threat to her family. And then Otto hugs his daughter. The final action of the scene serves as a dark culmination of his psychological manipulation. While the gesture outwardly appears to be an act of comforting fatherly love, it is fundamentally strategic. Otto weaponizes his paternal affection by offering this physical embrace only after he has successfully broken her emotionally and planted the inescapable fear of her children's murder. By acting as the emotional refuge from the very terror he just inflicted, he cements his psychological dominance and redirects her path entirely toward his own ruthless political agenda. The true subtext of this hug is not reassurance, but rather cold victory. I've won. This scene is the definitive turning point for the Greens. Alicent Hightower enters this rainstorm as a queen clinging to her morality and her desire to do what's right. But Otto Hightower ruthlessly strips away that idealism. By weaponizing the terrifying vulnerability of motherhood, he forces her to embrace the brutal pragmatism of war. I must protect my children at any cost. But here is the ultimate tragic irony of Otto's masterclass in manipulation. It operates entirely as a self-fulfilling prophecy. Otto is not a passive prophet predicting an unavoidable future. By terrifying Alicent into believing she has no choice but to usurp the Iron Throne to keep her children safe, he actively engineers the exact cycle of vengeance he warned her about. His fear-mongering directly sparks the civil war, and in a horrifying realization of his own warning, it is this very war that eventually leads assassins directly into the Red Keep, bringing the swords right to his own grandchildren's throats during the infamous Blood and Cheese assassination. Otto wins the psychological battle, but in doing so, he becomes the absolute architect of his own family's ruin.